All right. So real quick, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about should you move your office tools to the cloud? So my intention today, my name is John Michael. I've been with OfficeTools for about 6 years now. Very familiar with the program. I manage a sales team, and we're at our headquarters for So today what we're going to talk about is going to do a brief overview of the software, just basic functionality. But as I'm doing that, I'm going to be highlighting, showcasing what are the key features and benefits of having the software in a cloud environment. We're very happy about this acquisition because we've had a lot of our clients that have been expressing a need for remote access, mobility, just the modern accounting profession. A lot of people want to be unshackled from the desk. There's a lot of benefits to that. If we have an audit department or if we are at a client's office, there's obvious benefits there. But, a lot of people like to work from home, especially during tax season. It's nice to be able to send some of the staff home and not keep everybody there till 10 p.m. working on their individual and corporate returns and things like that. So we're going to talk about the benefits of having the software in the cloud while at the same time doing a broad overview of the software. I want to encourage folks that are listening in to interact with me if you have any questions about the software functionality, about the Abacus private cloud. That is where we host this software. Through this team up with Abacus, we are now, like I said, we're very happy to be able to take the software and put it into this private cloud environment. And we'll talk about the benefits of that. But by all means, please do feel free to key in with any questions that you have. I'll try to answer them as they come in, but if not, I'm going to go ahead and leave some time at the end for a quick little Q&A. So let's jump on in here. And for folks that are current users of the software, a lot of this will be familiar, but hopefully we can still learn some things as we go through. So this is our single screen interface that breaks down into 3 basic parts. First being the contact list over here on the left. The way we get this in is through a mass import, whether we're doing it directly from another system or doing it from a tool that we provide upon implementation. We're going to take all the contact info and import it in. That's what drives the second part of the software, which is this main screen here in the middle with the 9 tabs. These tabs are all connected. They all talk to each other. That's something called internal integration, effectively meaning we have our workflow, we have our time and billing, we have our document management, even our CRM, all working together. So we as a firm can work as one in one single firm management software. And then the third part is the activity list right down here at the bottom. My activity list is completely staff driven. So this is me, John Michael. I sign in today. I know I've got a few different types of returns I'm working on, a couple meetings on my calendar, some phone calls I need to return. And this list is what drives my day. Now, when I have my software in the private cloud environment, that means that as different people are delegating work to me or as I'm delegating work to other people, I'm able to access this list from wherever I am. And right now, if you're in certain parts of the country, you know that weather is definitely a deterrent when we try to get to work in the morning. So if I have my software in the cloud, I'm not missing any tasks that come up due, any alerts that show up on my system, bright red, bright yellow alerts that say, hey, you've got 10 days left on this individual tax return, or more importantly, we've got 10 days left on a fiduciary return that doesn't have the obvious due dates like an individual or a corporate. So we're not going to miss those alerts when we have our software in the Abacus private cloud because we're accessing it from wherever we are. As you know, if you're listening in and you're in our profession, there's not much worse than missing a deadline. And we can make sure that we get those alerts by accessing this in the cloud. Now, also from this list, we are able to track time. A very large benefit if you have an audit department or if you do audits in your firm, you know that it's very important to track your time when performing an audit. And we're able to do that with the software in the private cloud by logging in and tracking our time. And we can do that manually through the time tab. What's important here is that we key in the client, we tie that work to an existing engagement or project. It'll automatically assign a work code, and then from here I can put a start and end time or quantify it. So if I am working on somebody's audit, it'll track that time against that audit. And we're going to see in a minute why that's so important. We can also activate timers, and timers can be activated from literally anywhere in the system. Any one of these tabs, you can activate a timer, or we can do it again right here from the activity list. So as we all know, if we are perhaps sitting on hold with the IRS or something of that nature, we can just right click and start that timer, and it knows exactly where to put that time. It knows me, so it knows what my time is worth. I have an audit work code perhaps that auto populates here, so it knows exactly how much that time is worth. But it also knows the client and where to put that time against that project. And I keep using the audit example, but we encourage you to track time against any and all of your engagements that you're performing. Whether you're billing on a flat fee or you're billing your time, does not matter. Go ahead and track that time against that job. We're going to see in a second why that's important. And again, if I'm at my client's office, or perhaps I'm working from home, I'm able to log into my private cloud environment and track my time in OfficeTools. Somebody asked a question here, will we only host OfficeTools? That's a great question, and the answer is no. We can host your tax software, potentially. We can host your QuickBooks. We're going to host your Outlook. We want to take your entire infrastructure, your desktop, and put it into a private cloud environment so it's safe and protected, and we'll talk about that, but also to give you that remote access, mobility, flexibility. You know what? The freeways are closed for a snowstorm. That's okay. I can open up my laptop, and I can access my software, my documents, my tax software, everything I need through the Abacus private cloud, and even track that time like we're talking about. So we can run timers, and we can run multiples. It doesn't have to be just one. If I'm sitting on hold with the IRS, while at the same time maybe I'm billing for this, creating this invoice for this corporate tax return, whatever the case may be, we're not limited to just one timer. Now, the third way we track time here in OfficeTools is, again, right here from the activity list. The way this works is anytime I finish one of these items, I check it off, and then the system prompts a time card. And again, if I'm logging into the private cloud, I have my activity list, work is getting delegated to me. One of the partners sends me something I need to take care of, maybe file for the FEIN or call this client back, whatever the case is. When I finish that task, I check it off my list. The system then prompts a time card. And it's great because with that one click, it fills in all the necessary information, save how much time I spent. A lot of folks, if you're in the accounting profession, if you've been in our profession for any amount of time, you probably know that what standard is at the end of the day, I'm going to go back and hopefully if I wrote it down somewhere or keyed it into an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, then I try to remember how I spent my time. If I didn't write it down, yeah, I remember I was on the phone with ABC Company talking about this IRS notice. I don't remember how long it was. Maybe it was an hour, but I'm going to say 30 minutes or something like that. Well, that's 30 minutes of time that we've now missed. So the way we take care of that here in OfficeTools is with what's called real-time time tracking. If I didn't run a timer or something like that, I check it off, I plug in my time, and I hit OK. And I move on with my day. And the system knows all of the things it needs to know. It knows me, the staff, where to put that time. Now, you can also track time on this activity list without checking something off. As I'm sure you know, we don't finish everything that's on our list every single day. So if I'm chasing down missing info for this corporate tax return for my client Lucky Chinese Food, but I didn't get it, so I can't check this off. Or maybe I'm reviewing something I didn't finish. I need this to be on my list tomorrow morning. I can simply right-click, create the time card. That way it still tracks time against that job, but it doesn't disappear from my activity list. Now, one thing as well when we talk about the private cloud and we talk about that remote access is when it comes to outsourcing your returns. One thing that's very, very common if you go to any of the conferences, trade shows, things like that, tax updates, seminars. I spent a lot of my years here at the company traveling and doing those seminars and those conferences and things like that, speaking at them. And one trend as of late is outsourcing your returns. There's companies that'll help you with that. One thing I like to recommend to my clients, though, is maybe find some local college students that can do your 1040s, something like that. And when you host OfficeTools in a private cloud environment, as well as your tax software, it allows your remote people to have that remote access. And then what's unique about the Abacus private cloud, or what's special about that, is you, as the owner of your business, or as maybe one of the managers, or whatever the case may be, you still have control. You're not relinquishing all control to these remote people. So they would log into the private cloud to be able to access things like your tax software or your practice management, like what we're looking at right now. But furthermore, they're able to maybe access documents. But like I said, you have control over your own environment, even though it is technically in the Abacus private cloud. And when I say that, what I mean is you have the ability to determine, okay, I have this person, John Michael, and I only want him working on tax returns. He doesn't need to be in billing. He doesn't need to be able to access documents. I'm just going to limit his access while in the private cloud to the tax software. And I only want him to be able to track his time, perhaps, look at his calendar, track the projects, the engagements, the workflow, right? Certain tabs, certain parts of the software. This is especially important for our wealth management clients that are also using OfficeTools. Because if you're in wealth management, you know how important it is to maintain compliance. And part of that is locking down documents from your entire staff to be able to see. When my documents are on the server, anybody can access them. If I go into ABC Company and I go into documents, anybody who has access to my server can now see these documents. Even though technically they are in OfficeTools, OfficeTools is a non-proprietary document management system. And effectively what that means is when I go into the Documents tab here, we are simply just pointing to where the documents sit on the network or on the server. So if anybody has any kind of access to the server, even though I may hide the document in here, they can go in on the back end and look at that, and that's not compliant for our wealth management clients. However, when you have OfficeTools and all of your documents in the private cloud, in the Abacus private cloud, then you can limit who can access what documents. And to take that a step further, OfficeTools does offer a multi-office function, which gives you even more control. Meaning, I may have a part of my business that does, I work with a broker-dealer. Part of my business is accounting. The other part of it is wealth management. Well, me as the owner of both, when I log into OfficeTools, I see a 1 next to all my accounting clients and a 2 next to all my wealth management clients. But when my staff on the accounting side log in, they can only see one or the other, they can only see the accounting, and then the folks from wealth management only see theirs. But what's most important is when we have this private cloud environment, we can control what documents are able to be seen, edited, accessed by what staff members, even what time of day those staff members are able to access the software, what computer they're allowed to access the software from. So we don't relinquish control just by putting it in a private cloud environment. And then we can save a little bit and have a more increased revenue stream by outsourcing things like 1040s, bookkeeping work, things like that. So let's talk about billing quickly in the system. A lot of the firms I've talked to in the many years I've been doing this they have more of a manual billing process, perhaps going into QuickBooks and gathering those sheets that the partners and the preparers have been writing on or keying into Excel, and then at the end of the week going into QuickBooks and manually typing out invoices based on the time spent. That's a very, very laborious task. So for the billers at the office, the billers at the office tend to really, really love the billing part of our software. Our software is designed specifically for the accounting profession to be able to bill out of. So we know that you are perhaps billing on a flat fee basis, or that you are billing on your progress billing, or maybe you have retainers, or you're billing your time. Well, OfficeTools is designed for you, so it's meant to allow you to bill however you need to bill as an accountant. Now, we talked already about tracking time and tracking time against the actual engagement. Why that's so important is because I have my budget in here. I've got my corporate tax return in here. But when I look at this project screen, I know everything I need to know about this engagement, about this project, how much time we estimate it's going to take, what it's going to cost the firm based on what I'm paying my staff. This portion, of course, can be hidden from certain staff that don't need to see that. But also my fee. And so many people in our profession bill on a flat fee basis for things like tax returns. But if you're not measuring your time against those tax returns, there's a good chance you're not billing appropriately. So that's why when we track time in OfficeTools, we put that time against the actual project itself, because I've got my estimated fee. But if I'm spending twice as long on XYZ company as I am on ABC company, I should not be billing those people the same. I should not be billing those clients the same amount, even though I technically charge that much for my corporate tax returns. And again, that's why it's so important that we track that time. Right? So when I come in here into the workflow part of the software, we're gonna take a step back, cover workflow, jump into billing real quick, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more about the private cloud. So with OfficeTools, our workflow happens in this project world. We call the engagements projects. And a project is anything from tax prep to bookkeeping to audits to payroll, whatever we need these to be. But the key thing about these projects is that they're very, very customizable. It's funny, I've spoken with thousands and thousands of firms, and it seems that no two firm does a 1040 the exact same way. So what we want to do is we want to equip you with the actual projects themselves and the workflow designed for these projects, but that's meant for you to customize. If you don't do audits at your firm, fine, we'll take this out. Or perhaps your firm is in Canada, so none of this American lingo makes sense to you, so we'll just take that out and we'll equip you with T1s and T2s and so on. But the point is that we've got the workflow built into the system, and the system then prompts that workflow as we complete these tasks. 1040, first we're going to send out an engagement letter, make sure that thing comes back signed. Scan their documents in. And I always chase a rabbit here in this part because I think if you're not already doing this, you should be doing front-end scanning at your office. I've never been met with a reason not to. It's extremely helpful as we pass these projects around. If I can scan the project if I can scan the documents directly to that project as I pass this project around the office, we don't need to hunt down those documents. We're not looking in some file cabinet or opening up some proprietary software where my documents are. They're right here tied to the project, which is accessible in this private cloud as I'm working through these jobs. So we're going to scan in directly to the project at the beginning of it, and then we input into the tax software, figure out what's missing and chase it down, send it over to another preparer to review. You've got that step-by-step process built into the system, and then as you work through the system, it prompts that step-by-step or that workflow, while at the same time encouraging time tracking. And let me show you what that looks like very, very quickly, and then we'll get into billing. So somebody put this on my activity list, the project manager, perhaps the preparer. Somebody says, hey, John Michael, we need you to chase down missing info, bank statements from the last 3 months. And the great thing about having firm management software and not having something separate for workflows, separate for documents, separate for time, separate for billing, calendar over here in Outlook, phone slips for your phone calls. I've got one system that does all of that. I don't need to leave this screen. Bank statements from the last 3 months. Well, I can see that we have emailed them about those bank statements through our Outlook integration. I can also see that we have called about those bank statements a couple of times, and I can jump into that call and see the details of it. In fact, let's do that. Okay, in September, he told me he was faxing them in. And then he also said he's going to send them in today, a couple of days before that. Whatever the case is, I've got all that information here in front of me. So if the client calls in and says, hey, well, nobody told me you were waiting on those bank statements, not that clients ever lie, but if it happens, we're protected. We've got the tools we need to keep ourselves protected in that manner. So I get these bank statements in. I'm done with my step of the project, which is gathering the missing info. So now, as you already know, we're going to go down to our list and we're going to check it off. Now, the first part, you already know, it's going to prompt me to track my time. But as I've said, we're tracking that time against that return. So I say I spent an hour on that. You're going to see it update based on my hourly rate, while simultaneously prompting that next step of the workflow. Needs to go to the preparer or a managing partner to review, give it to that partner, hit OK. It goes right to their activity list to review it, and my budget is now up to date. And you can see why all this is so imperative, and especially if you have any kind of need for mobility, putting this in the private cloud is so important, so we can still be able to access these things and quickly do the things that we need to do, because in a profession like ours, where your asset is your time, that is not something that you can afford to waste. So we work from wherever, we do everything in 1 to 2 clicks, and then for the biller, we've got our budget up to date. So when it's time to bill for this project, we're profitable on this one, so we can go ahead and click Invoice Now, and it's going to create an invoice, merge in the fact that it's a 2016 corporate tax return. But now I've got all the details I need, and I can make sure I'm billing appropriately. Now, one more thing to say about these projects is they do roll forward based on the parameters of the project, of course. So when I complete this, it's going to create for me a next year's corporate tax return. It's going to remember how much time did we spend on this last year? What did I pay my staff for this? What did it cost my firm, rather, based on what I paid my staff? But also, what did we end up billing for this? If I wrote it down or wrote it up, perhaps because we were over budget on time, because their QuickBooks file was a mess, or I couldn't get in touch with them to get me back those bank statements, whatever the case may be, all of that rolls forward. And arguably more importantly, the notes made on the project will also roll forward to the following year. I know that may not seem like an important part, but it is when you consider things like maybe had I had a note in the system that said, client does not respond to emails, be sure to call them. I'm not going to waste my time typing out emails. I'm just going to go ahead and pick up the phone and call them and save my time next year to get closer to budget. And then with billing, we can invoice by clicking, or we can come into the billing tab and we can bill our WIP with a click. Those invoices, like I said, very, very customizable. If you want to have a detailed description of everything that went into that, or just something like perform general accounting services, it's entirely up to you. And because we're tracking so much, we now have the power to give our clients a detailed description. Hey, we had to write your invoice up by $500, but if you take a look at your invoice, you can now see that, we talked on the phone for a total of 14 hours right during tax season. So don't be so surprised that your bill went up, whatever the case may be. And again, when we have this in the private cloud environment, this allows for that flexibility in the billing component. But also, it's important to know we are taking payments in here. We've got protected client information, and that's why we want the security that comes along with the private cloud. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that. I'm going to see if we have any questions as we're jumping around here. Somebody asked what tools we sync up with. That's a very good question. Our software can integrate with Outlook, as I already mentioned, for things like the calendar. But if you're not using Outlook, that's fine. We're going to put this in a private cloud so you can access your calendar from wherever. The reason we want to use the OfficeTools calendar is because it is client specific. OfficeTools just says it's an appointment, Outlook just says an appointment, whereas OfficeTools says it's an appointment with ABC Company. So when they're in here for their hour-long interview, when I run that report and find out how much time I spent, that hour shows up on that report as well. We also fully integrate with QuickBooks. We are gold level partners with Microsoft as well as Intuit. So we're going to integrate with QuickBooks very well, as well as Outlook. So when we have our invoices, we just sync them over to QuickBooks. And all that detail goes back and forth. Same with contact information. So I want to talk about security very briefly, and then we'll have a couple seconds or a couple minutes rather at the end for any more questions. But one thing that I've noticed in being heavily involved in the accounting profession is that accountants are right now being targeted for cyber criminal activity, things like ransomware. And it's because we as accountants have such data-rich information. We've got our client social security numbers, we've got their QuickBooks passwords, We've got their prior year's tax returns kept in our document management system. And it's not just accountants that are affected by this. As you can see from this current slide, nearly half of businesses in 2016 were affected by ransomware. There's a really good chance that you know someone or have heard somebody who's been affected by this. Well, when you have your documents in the private cloud, this is something that we look out for and we protect against. We're doing things like backing up your data to make sure that if you are hit with ransomware or something happens, you're not completely out of luck. We can always bring up those backups, whatever the case may be. And this is kind of the way that infrastructure would look. The Abacus Private Cloud user, when you're accessing your data, you're going through different levels of protection. We offer the top firewall, and we also put your private server in a data center that's a tier 5 data center. That's the most secure data center in existence. We want to make sure that our clients are as protected as they can be. And when you may have your own IT and your own security, but a lot of those times those are very reactive rather than proactive. So we're monitoring your data 24/7. We offer a 5.9 guarantee for uptime, 99.999% guarantee for uptime. Because as we know, especially during tax season, we can't have any downtime, and we especially don't want to be infected by any kind of cyber criminal activity. And those are the things that we protect against by putting your office tools, your documents, your tax software, any and all of those things up into the private cloud environment with Abacus Private Cloud. Some of the things that moving into the private cloud replaces are your servers. Servers are that technology is becoming very antiquated. In the future, everything will be in the private cloud. This is why so many of our current OfficeTools clients have already moved into the private cloud, is to kind of get in front of that, take a step forward into the future, rather than waiting for when it's mandatory. But also things like your capital expenditures go down. One thing that's not such an apparent savings, because I know we are accountants, we're money people, we're number people. We got to make sure it makes sense. Part of it also, in a lot of cases, your liability insurance goes down. If you're an accountant, you know that you have a liability insurance. When you have the level of security that we offer through Abacus Private Cloud, that liability insurance goes down as well. IT security, IT reactive time, local IT costs, things like that. And we only have a couple of minutes here, so I'm going to take a brief look and see what kind of questions we have in the panel and answer some of those. Okay, somebody asked, what tax software do we integrate with at OfficeTools? Very good question. So we have a full integration with Lacert. And what that effectively means is if I change a phone number in OfficeTools, it'll automatically update Lacert, or it'll prompt me to make that update in Lacert. Same thing with QuickBooks. If I change info, it'll change it in QuickBooks on its own. Outlook, same thing. However, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients using a wide variety of different tax software applications. And what a lot of those folks will use those for, and in most cases we can do this, is simply just printing the tax return from their tax software into OfficeTools. And then from there, sending it to the client in a private environment like the portal or something like that. But regardless of what tax software you use, we do have clients that are using that tax software. All right. Hopefully that answered that. I have another question here. Is OfficeTools available as an online application? That's a good question as well, and no, it is not. I feel that there's a danger that comes along with SaaS applications. SaaS, it's called software as a service. There's some risks involved there. Now, even if you do have a SaaS application, if you're running it through the private cloud, when you're in the Abacus Private Cloud, you're doing your web browsing in there, your emails are happening through there, because we want that top level of protection and security. However, with the online applications, you just don't have that control. If you have a disgruntled employee that decides they're going to go home and open up the SaaS application and start taking pictures and things like that, we want to make sure we protect against that. So I want to real quick thank everybody for joining me today. If you have any questions, you need anything at all, you want to see a private demonstration of the software or talk about the Abacus Private Cloud any further, go to abacusnext.com, go to officetools.com, request a demonstration. Somebody will reach out to you and have an intimate conversation about your current infrastructure and your current needs, whether it's practice management software or hosting in a private cloud environment. Thank you again, everyone.